every fan out there of the film, of which there are millions and millions of people who really revere Scarface. And so for us, we really took it seriously.
Now you're talking to me, baby. That I like.
At one point, we were over 106 people working on Scarface. That's 106 people, all with really specific things to do, really focused on delivering the best gameplay experience possible. Because you can have as many people working on the game as you want, but that doesn't determine quality. What determines quality is a passion and a focus. And Radical has that going away for Scarface. They've been working on this game, by the time we're done, close to 3 years. And unless you have a drive and passion and focus for the product, you're not going to be able to get the best out of those people.
Well, it's not just any popular movie franchise. There are a whole bunch of very passionate people out there. This film means an incredible amount to them. So, what we all want to really do is, well, respect that and give them what they're after, but also respect the fact that we are making a game, and a game is a very different thing from a movie.
You can make a movie about a story, you can write a book about something, but nothing puts you in the driver's seat like a game.
You thought you could take me? No, I take Tony Montana down by me!
In terms of the story for the game, we were faced with some interesting challenges. One, the movie story was just so well done by Oliver Stone, Brian De Palma, Al Pacino, and the rest of the cast that there's really no way that you could improve upon what they did in the film. The second was that Tony dies at the end of the movie. And so for a player to invest their time in gameplay, only to have the character that they've become so involved with die at the end of the gameplay experience, we didn't feel was very compelling. So we ultimately decided on the strategy of creating a sequel game, a what-if scenario. What if Tony didn't die?
Well, I'm back, okay? This is my town, my world, and nobody's gonna take it away from me.
For us, because we're going to change the fiction of the film, we had to start at a point prior to Tony dying, obviously. But the other reason why we chose that mansion, shootout as the opening is, Scarface can't be a pussy ass, Tony's gonna ride a bike around Miami for the first half hour of gameplay. It's gotta come over the top at you like a fist to the face, and that's why that Tony, blowing open the door, say hello to my little friend line, and then just spilling out bullets into people's bodies was something that set the tone and said, you know what, this game is gonna fucking grab you by the balls right at the start and not let you go until you're out of Tony's mansion.
So it's sort of like, can the player, when reliving that experience, can they even out Tony? Can they figure out how to get out of every situation, even the seemingly inescapable one he's at the end of the movie?
Give me a fucking army, you're gonna save me!
Yeah, we have an overall story arc, but how the player reaches those, those story elements, we could all play the game and none of us would have the same type of experience, because Scarface gives the player a lot of freedom. Now, that's not to say that we don't use a lot of, cinematic moments, and we have a lot of NISs that, draw emotion from the player. But for us, it's really more about the game's got to be fun to play.
When people play this game, the one thing that's going to shine out for them is being able to play Tony Montana, being able to play with his attitude, with his outlook on life, with his perspective that was clearly established in the movie.
We've taken him from movies, taken this strong, iconic character and put him in a video game and just let him loose. And that's really what we're giving the gamer. We're giving the gamer the opportunity of taking this character, this so over-the-top character who's capable of so much, and said, do what you want with him in this open world.
This is good, man. Real good.
Tony is not a generic thug. He's Tony Montana. He's got a set of morals that he lives by. He doesn't kill innocent women and children. That's basically his downfall in the movie, is when he won't allow that car to be exploded because he doesn't want to kill the innocent woman and child.
Do a little kiss in a car. This is so fucking bad.
He's got this moral sense to him, and he lives his life by it. That's something that was really important to us in capturing this character, is capture both sides of him. The full depth of Tony's character is in this game.
You think I killed 2 kids and a woman? Fuck that!
Well, I think the reason why the moral code works in Scarface is because it's true to the character.
What do you think I am, huh?
We had this whole thing, it was like, what would Tony Montana do? And that was the kind of thing that we stuck with. Like, what would Tony do?
We use that same litmus test for every single element that we put in the game. It's sort of the, what would Tony Montana do?
Now maybe we can get down to business.
We want the player to feel like Tony Montana, to live through the experience of building up their drug empire from scratch, starting from nothing and becoming this super powerful drug lord. And the way to do that is to take risks, to push it the right amount, to have the balls of Tony Montana. But being a drug dealer is not easy.
It's a war, Tony. They're all trying to take over what you have.
Tell me what you know.
It gives you the opportunity to work your way through those ranks, starting out dealing with street dealers and small suppliers, and eventually ending up owning most of Miami, almost all of Miami, and working with the real big suppliers out in the islands just outside of Miami.
You work for me, and we go straight to the top. How'd you like that?
So the Drug Wars gameplay itself also unlocks story missions and basically regulates the entire flow of the experience.
I need to start making my own moves. Gotta get back in,
A large part of the game centers around shooting, and we came up with the concept of blind rage, which if you think back to the movie when Tony's standing up on the balcony and Sosa's henchmen are storming his mansion, and he's just all coked up in an absolute rage up at the top there, just shooting the shit out of everyone. And we sort of try to capture, bottle that energy, and get that across into our mechanic as well.
You fucking motherfucker!
There's a whole structure, a whole system underneath just the pure action that you do, where what you're trying to do as Tony Montana is recapture, everything that's been taken away from you.
I took a little vacation, Things got a little bit crazy, but that's done. I'm back.
We've built a lot of subsystems into there that the player's going to enjoy, like exotic items that you're able to buy and really sort of capture that feeling of like, okay, I'm taking that next step up.
You're selling drugs, you're collecting millions of dollars. You can't just spend it on new ammo, and another version of the M16. There's got to be stuff to blow your money on that isn't necessary, because that's being Tony Montana, right? The extravagant lifestyle.
Can I buy a Tiger from this thing?
I believe that the Tiger will be made available soon, yes.
Scarface is an enormous game. It's just gigantic, open world, full city of Miami, as well as a mapped out version of the Caribbean islands.
There's so much work to be able to enable a player to interact with our game how he or she wants to. We had to create tons of both outdoor and indoor locations so that the player could explore and find fun things to do.
You want to take on the world, so you need a large Miami. And we also wanted to incorporate these exotic islands where you could really get away from Miami and try and make big bucks.
There's a lot that goes into it. It's a lot of planning and a lot of understanding of what the content of the game is going to be. And you have to design your game so that your world is limited as well, so you have to have good boundary conditions in the world.
The process integrating game design and world building is basically called gray blocking. And at the very start of the project, you have game designers defining the gameplay that they want in a certain environment, and then you also have someone defining exactly what that environment should be as a theme. At that point, we will lay out a blueprint of what that environment should look like, and then we will build that in a gray block, which is basically a very, very simple representation of that geometry that we can place in the game and that we can play through. At that point, when we actually have a viable game footprint, we will then pass that off to a world builder who can actually start detailing it, painting it, adding textures, adding props, vegetation, and start to make it look like a real environment that has a flourished art direction.
Once we got some sort of a fun game, we took those gray blocks and started sort of like polishing them, adding textures, making them look more sophisticated, and of course creating very cool props that interact with characters and vehicle.
Another part to that process would be including the concept drawings and sitting down with the art director and looking at that stuff and making sure, we would sit through and say, okay, we need 4 of these and 2 of those, and we'd make bus stops and mailboxes, whatever it took to make that area look cool. And if, say, we had a location like Venus Bar on one of the islands, we'd look at some of the elements that Hanny's team had made and we'd say, hey, that thing would be cool to blow up. Let's take one of those and make it into a prop. That thing there is cool too. Let's make one of those. Yeah. So we definitely collaborated on making all this stuff come to life.
We're really pushing on the rendering side, so we spent a lot of time working on the ocean, making it look really great. We spent a lot of time on the vehicles, and that looks great. And on the AI side, we have a huge AI team, and those guys are working really hard to provide excellent content.
Holy shit! As a mission scripter, my goal is to take the design that is presented to me, place it into the game, and try to make it fun, balanced, and challenging for the player to progress through the game. Decide, okay, more guys over here that shoot less accuracy, or these guys are more accurate, and there's less numbers of them, or they spawn quicker.
Come on! Who's gonna face me?
Vehicle AI in Scarface has quite a large scope. There's a number of different types of vehicles in this game: cars, boats, helicopters, planes. From a technical point of view, there's a lot of challenge there. These cars need to race, chase, flee, explode in spectacular ways. Traffic AI has to respond the way you think they should, stopping at stoplights, not running over people, cops spawning, chasing you. Of course, they must also respond to Tony in the way you want to be responded to. When he taunts them, they get out of the cars, you can take their cars, they respond to you with dialogue.
Me, I want what's coming to me.
Oh, well, what's coming to you, Tony?
The world, Chico. And everything in it.
We actually took a trip down to Miami before the project started and took about 4,000 photos for reference. And the biggest thing was just getting a good feel of the culture and just the life of what Miami is really like and what it was like to be there around that time. And that just gave us amazing inspiration to come back here and create these environments.
What I brought back from that trip to Miami was sort of like the light, that feeling of heat, that sense of the pace of life. Those are the sorts of elements, rather than, you know, this building sat on this corner or this road had this kind of junction at the end of it. It's more that kind of ambience rather than a literal kind of accuracy.
We looked at those pictures and we tried to get the essence of those pictures and translate them into cool looking environments. It's a very stylized impression of Miami, I would say. Elements from the game, the street lights, are all stolen straight from the real world. We'd build the models, put them together, also incorporate with the models is a destruction state where there's a version of it where it's clean and a version of it where it's destroyed. Those two elements are exported out. We then add to it effects and some of the information to tell you how it's going to behave. And then at that point, we throw it through the pipeline into the game and test it out and see how it works.
With respect to the environments that we had from the movie, it was a little bit more straightforward because we had really good reference from the movie. It was really cool to be walking around with Tony Montana in a full 3D interactive environment compared to just watching it as a third person from a movie.
There was a good correspondence between the core sort of iconography and the core values. You know, this black v white that goes on in the movie and goes on with Tony Montana. So I was trying to preserve that, or try and carry that over. So what you'll see in the game is this kind of like difference between the way we're treating the outdoor spaces and the indoor spaces.
We had to include sort of the cheesiness of the 80s, but also sort of, you know, kind of cool style that would be relevant to today's game players, and so we sort of mixed the two together and came up with something kind of that looks kind of 80s, and you can see it as being very 80s, but still sort of fitting with a modern kind of vibe.
So choosing locations for the game, it was important that we obviously hit the ones that people expected to see. So Tony's mansion being first and foremost of that. Then the other one that we kind of like made sure that we were going to see was the Babylon Club. The only external one that we really needed to hit, I think, was the Sunray Motel down on Ocean Drive. So a lot of effort went into that to sort of like, again, scour the movie, work with concept art, create kind of like color roughs, match the lighting to make sure that we delivered on those, because they are very much, you know, the iconography of the film. And I think those three we kind of spent a huge amount of time on and kept going back to, and hopefully it pays off and people see that it's paid off.
A lot of the scenes that you see in the movie, they were kind of sets that were constructed in the studio, and you never know, you know, how one space leads into another. For a game, you have to kind of make that imaginative leap. You have to create those joining spaces. So that's what we've done. We've got things like the vehicles, the characters, the props, the cinematics. Each one of those is at the stage where you have to kind of coordinate the look and coordinate how they're relating with one another.
Tanya's gone. We gotta expand.
You see that film over and over, and I kind of have nothing but respect for the performance of Pacino. What he's doing in that film all the time with his face is unbelievable. I mean, when you see subsequent shots of him sort of from other movies, he looks like a different person.
We were probably under a lot more scrutiny than any other game as far as cinematics goes. This is a famous movie. We have the most famous face ever in a video game. We're trying to make it as close to the movie as possible. We watched the movie. We used De Palma's shots, you know, his signature shots as inspiration. I hope we live up to you know, to the expectations of the people out there.
Say hello to my little friend.
Music and sound in general plays a huge role in this game. So, you know, we wanted to create an authentic Scarface experience. So, 1983, Miami, we've got all the sounds that you would expect to hear in that world.
A lot of attention was paid to the music in the game. One of the most important aspects was we were able to access the full Giorgio Moroder score from the film and incorporate that into the game, and it's such a dramatic and iconic piece of music that it really sets the stage for the gameplay experience.
So you've got that whole set of authentic 1983 music, and then what we wanted to do is actually give music to the people of today's generation who also love Scarface and let them customize their game experience in their open world. So we also have got some contemporary hip-hop music, contemporary rock, and just popular music from today that people can actually plug into their music player in the game and actually play that music as well.
I mean, I think you have to be a little bit flexible. Not every tune we wanted got in the game, but I would say the vast majority of songs that we really felt like were important to be in Scarface are actually in the final game.
We wanted a track that was kind of fresh and no one had really heard before, so we really wanted to use the kind of music player as a sort of way to do that.
Vivendi came up with a very innovative promotion, which was basically to run a music contest on MySpace and basically ask MySpace community members who were musicians to post their songs up to MySpace and let the community vote on which song was most appropriate for Scarface in the Scarface game, and that they would put that artist in the game. And so a group out of Chicago, KZ, won the contest and will actually be featured in the game with their track.
I got ears, Joe. I hear things.
For the Foley, for a lot of the combat hits and Foley sounds in the game, we had a session where we got a ton of fruit. We brought in fruit and pasta and all these kinds of things, and we just basically just smashed the shit out of everything. And we recorded that, layered it all up, and mixed it so it just sounded really kind of nasty, almost like over-the-top horror film. Every sound effect in this game is kind of that approach where it has to feel more brutal than in reality it is, of course. In this game, I think there are 32,000 lines of dialogue.
Come on, look at me. I know Miami. I'm gonna take it all back. You know it's true.
We wanted to capture the whole feeling of the movie, that kind of excess of Pacino's performance, which really demanded like an entire kind of, almost a complete vocabulary for Tony Montana. Not only that, but we wanted to get a really strong supporting cast. Obviously, you need people to perform really well against that kind of a character to even come close to standing up to him. Most games are kind of around 3,000, 5,000 lines. So obviously we've gone just way, way beyond anything that certainly I've worked with before.
Keep your Vaseline paws out of my pants, okay? Tony, I've missed you so much.
Fucking loser.
I stole the world, man.
Look, this is the kind of shit that sells itself.
Holy fuck!
Well, try it and die.
You understand?
I think the dialogue in the video game is hilarious, and lots of the lines have become staples in the sound editing room too.
We suggest you make a donation.
Maybe you two should go home and donate a little something to your wives, you know?
Well, obviously bringing all these elements together, like the sound effects and the kind of dialogue stuff, that obviously needs to be mixed. And like with interactive entertainment, it's very different to mixing like a movie, for example, because everything is linear in a film, and it's everything's laid out, and you know what the big events are, and you know exactly when they're going to happen. So with a game, it's completely kind of open-ended, and you never know when the player is going to trigger these events, and you never know what music is going to be playing in that situation. You don't know what kind of characters are going to be there, so we have to do like a kind of full interactive mix for the whole game. So we're taking taking all the game production and we're moving it to where we're going to mix all the different elements of the game on that stage there.
There's a lot of people that feel very passionately about this product, feel very passionately about the character, and it's up to us. You know, we need to take good care of that.
It's very exciting working on a game that you know people are going to pay attention to.
I'm a big fan of the movie as well, and we're doing everything we can to make sure we deliver on an authentic Scarface experience because we know how much it means to the fans.
You finished? Can I go now?